I woke at 6, like always, breath clouding the air inside the cab of my truck. December frost made the metal gate handle bite my bare hand when I climbed out to check the cattle. Wind whistled through gaps in the barn siding. The thermos coffee I'd made an hour earlier was already going cold. 3 days before, my wife stood up at the VFW Christmas party and told everyone she wanted an open relationship. Glass of Merlot raised like she was making a toast. The room went quiet. You could hear the cheap tinsel garland ticking against the heating vent. I watched 50 years of neighbors and friends find reasons to look at their boots instead of my face. Travis Hammond, the real estate developer, smirked from his booth in the corner. Diane left with him that night. Didn't even try to hide it. I drove home alone, Christmas lights on Main Street blurring together. In the machine shed the next morning, I stood looking at my grandfather's old fence stretcher hanging on the wall. Brass plate read, "Hold things together, JB 1947. I traced the letters with my thumb and wondered if some things weren't worth holding anymore. The property tax notice came in the mail that afternoon. $47,000. Diane didn't know about it yet. The morning after the party, I did what I always do when my head won't quiet down. I checked fence. Started at the north line, where it meets the Henderson's property, worked my way south. Frost made the barbed wire shine like Christmas tinsel, though I wasn't much in the mood for that comparison. My boots crunched through frozen grass. Cattle watched me from the far side of the pasture, breath steaming, probably wondering why I was out here so early, even for me. Found a break in the wire, about 200 yards down. Coyote or deer, hard to say. I walked back to the truck for the stretcher and my toolbox. Diesel fuel smell lingered on my work gloves from yesterday's tractor maintenance. The metal tools were cold enough to hurt. I worked slow, methodical, clip the broken ends clean, measure the gap, splice in new wire. Use the stretcher to get the tension right. Not too loose, or the cattle walk through. Not too tight, or it snaps come winter. My hands knew the work without my brain needing to supervise, which left my brain free to replay the party. Diane's voice saying open relationship like she was suggesting we try a new restaurant. Hammond's knowing smile. The way Pastor Jim had touched my shoulder on his way out, didn't say a word, just squeezed once and kept walking. The wire sang when I got the tension right, high clean note like a guitar string. I had twisted the ends tight, clipped off the excess, moved on to the next section. By the time I finished, the sun was halfway up and I still couldn't feel my fingers. Diane's car pulled into the driveway just as I was putting tools away. 7 in the morning. She got out wearing the same black dress from the party, heels in one hand. There was a hotel parking receipt on the passenger seat, visible through the window. She didn't look at me, just walked past toward the house. I waited until I heard the shower running upstairs before I went inside. The property tax letter was sitting on the kitchen table where I'd left it the day before. County seal on the envelope. I'd been avoiding opening it. End-of-year reassessments never brought good news. But standing there smelling hotel soap drifting down from upstairs, listening to water run through pipes my grandfather had installed in 1952, I figured I might as well add one more kick to the day. $47,000. New assessed value based on comparable recent sales in the area and development potential. Payment due March 15th, or the county could force a sale. I read it 3 times, ran the numbers in my head. We didn't have $47,000, not liquid. Not without selling cattle or equipment or taking out a loan against the land itself, which I'd sworn I'd never do. My phone buzzed. Jake, my son from my first marriage. Dad, I heard about last night. Word travels fast in a town of 8,000. I shouldn't have been surprised. News travels, I said. Is she serious about the open relationship thing? Appears so. Christ. He was quiet for a minute. I heard traffic in the background. He lived down in Cincinnati, worked construction. Dad, I gotta ask. If you two split up, what happens to the ranch? That's still supposed to come to me and Melissa, right? That was Grandpa's will. It's complicated. How complicated? I looked at the tax letter. I've got other problems right now, Jake. What kind of problems? The kind that cost $47,000 by March. He swore again, quieter this time. You need help? I need to figure this out. We talked for a few more minutes, him offering money he didn't have, me declining money I might need. By the time I hung up, I heard Diane coming downstairs. She was wearing different clothes, hair wrapped in a towel. She poured coffee like it was a normal Wednesday morning. We need to talk about this, I said, holding up the tax letter. She barely glanced at it. County's been reassessing everyone. The Morrisons got hit with something similar last year. The Morrisons sold their land. Well, she added cream to her coffee, stirred slow. Maybe that's something we should consider? Selling. It's a lot of acreage for just the two of us, Walt. And if the county says it's worth that much, my grandfather homesteaded this place in 1947, and I know the history. She sipped her coffee, looking out the window at the fields. I'm just saying, maybe it's time to think about options. Don't worry about the taxes. I have someone who might want to buy the land. She said it casual, like she was mentioning the weather. I needed cattle feed, which meant a trip to Randy's store on Main Street. I've been putting it off for 2 days, but the herd doesn't care about your personal problems. They need to eat. The bell over the door chimed when I walked in. Randy was behind the counter, pricing something with a label gun. 2 other men, I recognized from the VFW, were looking at fence posts in the back. All 3 of them glanced up when I entered. All 3 of them found something else to look at real quick. The store smelled like seed grain and floor wax, same as always. But the silence felt different, heavier. I grabbed a cart and headed for the feed aisle, boots loud on the old wood flooring. Behind me, I heard whispers, not even trying to be quiet, really. Just low enough they could pretend I hadn't heard. Can't believe she said it right there in front of everyone. Heard Hammond took her to the Marriott in Millerton? Poor bastard. What's he supposed to do? I loaded 6 bags of cattle feed into the cart, 50 pounds each. The paper crinkled loud in the quiet store. By the time I wheeled up to the counter, the 2 men from the back had left. Door chime rang behind them. Randy started scanning bags without looking at me. How you doing, Randy? Doing fine, Walt. You? Been better. He nodded, still not making eye contact, punched buttons on the old register. The total came up. I handed him my card. While we waited for it to process, he finally looked up. That Hammond fellow was in here yesterday, he said quiet. Asking questions about your acreage. Wanted to know how much land you had, whether it was all contiguous, whether there were any easements or water rights issues. That's so. Said it's prime for development. Something about being close enough to the highway, good drainage, views of the ridge. Randy handed me the receipt. Thought you should know. Appreciate it. I loaded the feed into the truck bed. Across the street, I could see Diane's Mercedes parked outside the coffee shop. Through the window, I could see her sitting at a table with 2 women from her book club, all 3 of them laughing about something. She caught me looking, and her smile faltered for just a second before she turned back to her friends. The drive home, I couldn't stop thinking about Hammond asking questions. About Diane saying she had someone interested in buying. About the timing of it all. Her wanting an open relationship right when the tax reassessment hit. Maybe I'm not a smart man, but I know when pieces start fitting together in a way I don't like. That evening, I found Diane in the kitchen making herself dinner. Just for herself. 1 chicken breast in the pan, 1 plate on the counter. I guess we weren't doing the couple thing anymore. Randy said Hammond was asking about the ranch. She didn't turn around. Travis is curious about land opportunities in the area. It's what he does. Travis now, that his first name. That's what people call him, Walt. You spending a lot of time with people who call him Travis? She flipped the chicken breast. Steam rising. I thought we agreed I could explore connections. That was the whole point of the conversation we had. Conversation. I laughed, but it came out wrong. You made an announcement at a Christmas party. That's not a conversation. You didn't object. I was too shocked to object. She turned off the heat, faced me. Look, I didn't want it to be like this. I wanted us to approach this as partners, as adults. You could be dating too. You could be meeting new people, but you're choosing to sit here and sulk. Meeting new people, like Travis Hammond. I don't have to explain who I spend time with. But you do when he's asking around town about buying our land. I pulled out the tax letter, set it on the counter between us. This came 3 days ago. County wants $47,000 by March 15th. You said you had someone interested in buying. Was that Hammond? She looked at the letter but didn't touch it. I mentioned the property to him. Yes. He said he'd be interested in making an offer if we ever decided to sell. When did you mention it? I don't remember exactly. Before or after you decided you wanted an open relationship? Her jaw tightened. Those 2 things have nothing to do with each other. Don't they? We stared at each other across the kitchen. The chicken was getting cold on the stove. Outside, I could hear the wind picking up, rattling the storm windows. Gonna be below freezing tonight. My phone buzzed. County Assessor's Office, the caller ID said. I answered. Mr. Brennan, this is Janet from the county office. I'm calling about your property tax appeal. I haven't filed an appeal yet. Oh, papers rustling on her end. I'm sorry, I have you marked as denied. Let me check. Yes, here it is. Initial appeal was filed December 8th, denied on the 16th due to insufficient documentation. You can file a secondary appeal, but you'll need to have all documentation submitted by January 31st for the hearing in late February. I didn't file any appeal. More paper sounds. It shows here it was filed by Diane Brennan, co-owner of the property. Is that your wife? I looked at Diane. She was very still. Yes, I said, that's my wife. Well, the secondary appeal is still an option if you want to pursue it. But I have to warn you, Mr. Brennan, denial on appeal means the assessment stands. Payment is still due. March 15th regardless. I thanked her and hung up. You filed an appeal without telling me. I was trying to help. You filed it incomplete so it would get denied. That's not... So the assessment would stand, so we'd have no choice but to sell. I put my phone in my pocket, felt my hands shaking. How long have you been planning this with Hammond? You're being paranoid. Am I? She grabbed her plate, her phone. I'm going to eat in the bedroom. I have plans tonight, and I don't need this before I leave. Plans with Travis. She didn't answer. Just walked out. A minute later, I heard the bedroom door close. Then the shower running. Then, an hour after that, the sound of her car pulling out of the driveway, gravel crunching under tires, taillights disappearing down the road toward town. Toward Hammond, probably. Toward whatever she thought was waiting for her, that was better than this. I sat at the kitchen table with the tax letter. $47,000. March 15th. And now no appeal, or at least no easy appeal, because Diane had poisoned that well on purpose. The house was cold and quiet. I could hear the refrigerator humming, could hear my own breathing, could hear, from somewhere deep in the walls, the old pipes settling as the temperature dropped outside. My phone buzzed again. Text message from a number I didn't recognize. Mr. Brennan, this is Claire Meadows from the county assessor's office. Janet mentioned your situation. I handle property appeals. If you want to file a secondary appeal, I can help you navigate the process. No charge, it's part of my job, let me know. I stared at the message. Claire Meadows. The name was familiar, but I couldn't place it. Someone from town, probably. Someone who'd heard about the taxes and felt sorry for the old man getting taken apart piece by piece. I typed back. How soon can we meet? The reply came fast. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. County office? I'll be there. The VFW opened at 6 for the early coffee crowd. Mostly veterans, mostly over 60, mostly men who'd learned that starting the day with other people who understood silence was better than starting it alone. I had been going for 15 years, since my first wife Linda died. It was Vern McKay who'd invited me that first time. Said I looked like I needed coffee that wasn't made by my own sad hands. Vern was already there when I walked in, sitting at his usual spot by the window. The place smelled like burnt coffee and floor wax. Someone had put up blinking Christmas lights around the old photographs on the walls. Young men in uniform, staring out from Korea, Vietnam, Desert Storm. Vern served in Korea, came back with a Purple Heart and a toolbox full of skills. He turned into a repair business that kept half the county's equipment running. He poured me a cup without asking, pushed it across the table. The ceramic was chipped, probably older than my son. Rough week, when he said, you heard. Everyone heard, Walt. Small town. I wrapped my hands around the mug, let the heat soak in. Outside the window, Main Street was empty except for one pickup truck idling at the stoplight. The cold made everything look sharper, harder edged. Linda would have handled this better, I said. Linda would have thrown her out the first night. Vern sipped his coffee, eyes on me over the rim. But Linda's been gone 26 years. This is different. I don't know what I'm doing. You're doing what you've always done. Taking care of things, fixing fence, keeping the herd fed. He set his mug down. But here's what I learned in Korea, and it took me 40 years to understand it. Some things you can't fix by just holding on tighter. Sometimes the wire's already snapped, and you're just hurting your hands trying to keep the tension. So I should let her go. I'm saying you should stop treating yourself like a spare tire. Like you're just there to be used when she needs you, then tossed back in the shed when she doesn't. He leaned forward. My daddy used to say a man's worth is in how he treats his truck. You keep it running, keep it clean, make sure it starts on cold mornings. That's respect. But you don't keep a spare tire mounted when the real tire's doing fine. You understand what I'm telling you? Not sure I do. She wants you available when it's convenient. She don't want you. She wants the option of you. There's a difference. I drank my coffee. It was terrible. Same as always. Got a property tax problem, too. County wants $47,000 by March. Christ, that's the reassessment? Diane filed an appeal, got it denied. Now I'm stuck with it. Vern's jaw worked. She filed it to get it denied? Looks that way. That woman, he shook his head. You need help with a secondary appeal? Got someone at the county office who says she can help? Claire Meadows. Something shifted in Vern's face. Claire Meadows, that's a good name. You know who she is? Someone from the assessor's office. She's Diane's cousin, mother's side. Younger by about 10 years. He refilled both our cups from the pot on the warmer. Her daddy was Tom Meadows, had 80 acres out past the reservoir, lost it all back in '95 to a county error. Reassessment based on wrong property lines, something about a survey from the 60s that nobody caught till it was too late. Tom couldn't pay, county forced a sale, he died 6 months later, heart attack. But everyone knew it was really a broken heart. And his daughter works at the county office now. She's been there 22 years. Probably knows every property record in the system. Vern looked at me steady. She's good people, Walt. Never married, takes care of her mother. Quiet, but sharp, real sharp. If anyone can find a way through your tax mess, it's her. Diane ever mention her? Doubt it. Claire's not exactly the type Diane spends time with. Claire drives a 10-year-old Corolla and packs her lunch. Diane leases a Mercedes and eats at the bistro. He stood up, put a hand on my shoulder. But here's the thing. Claire understands what land means. She watched her daddy lose his soul when he lost his farm. She won't let that happen to you, if she can help it. The pressure of his hand felt like permission for something I couldn't name yet. The county office was in the old courthouse building, 3 stories of yellow brick that hadn't been updated since the 70s. I took the stairs to the second floor, found the assessor's office at the end of the hall. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The air smelled like copy machine toner and old paper. Claire Meadows was younger than I expected, maybe 49, 50. Brown hair pulled back simple, reading glasses on a chain around her neck. She stood up when I came in, shook my hand firm. Mr. Brennan, thanks for coming in. Walt's fine. Walt then, I'm Claire. She gestured to a chair across from her desk. I pulled your file after Janet called. I have to be honest, the initial appeal was incomplete, almost deliberately so. My wife filed it. I know. She said it gentle, like she understood there was a story there she wasn't going to ask about. The good news is you still have options. A secondary appeal requires more documentation, but it's not impossible. The bad news is the deadline's tight, end of January for the February hearing, and the burden of proof is on you. What kind of documentation? She pulled out a folder, opened it to show me pages of property records, survey maps, comparable sales data. We need to prove the assessment is based on erroneous data. Usually that means finding mistakes in the comparable sales they used, or errors in the property description, or boundary issues. She looked up at me. It's technical work, takes time, but I've done this before. For people whose initial appeals got sabotaged? A small smile. I've seen stranger things in this office. We spent the next hour going through paperwork. She explained every form, every requirement, every deadline. Her handwriting was neat, color-coded. She had a system for everything. Blue ink for dates, green for dollar amounts, red for urgent items. Watching her work, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Hope, maybe. Or just relief that someone was taking this seriously. I'll need to do a site visit, she said finally. Verify the property boundaries, check the survey markers, make sure the land description matches reality. Would next week work? Anytime. She made a note in her calendar. I'll call before I come out. I stood to leave, then turned back. Why are you helping me? This is above and beyond. She was quiet for a moment, pen still in her hand. My father lost his farm to a county mistake. Nobody helped him fight it. Nobody even tried. She met my eyes. I became a county employee so I could help people like you, people like my dad. It's not charity, Mr. Brennan. It's just doing the job right. Walking out to my truck, I felt lighter somehow. The sun was trying to break through the clouds. The cold didn't bite quite as hard. I sat in the cab for a minute before starting the engine. Just breathing. Claire Meadows, Diane's cousin. The one Diane probably never talked about, never invited to anything, never thought about at all. My phone buzzed. Text from Diane. Out tonight, don't wait up. I didn't respond. Just drove home, thinking about spare tires. And good people. In the strange way help sometimes comes from the last place you expect. Diane came home on a Tuesday afternoon with company. I was in the barn, doing maintenance on the tractor, when I heard 2 car doors slam. Through the open bay door, I watched Diane and another woman walk toward the house. The woman was carrying a leather briefcase. Both of them were wearing business clothes that looked out of place against the mud and gravel of the driveway. I gave them 10 minutes, then walked up to the house. They were sitting at the kitchen table, papers spread out between them, coffee mugs I hadn't washed that morning pushed to the side. Walt, Diane said, this is Patricia Summers. She's an attorney. I asked her to come out and talk to us about some financial planning. Patricia stood, offered her hand. Firm grip, professional smile. Mr. Brennan, I specialize in family law and property division. I didn't sit down. Property division. Just exploring options, Diane said, being smart about our assets. Patricia opened her briefcase, pulled out more papers. In Montana, marital property is divided equitably in a divorce. That includes real estate, equipment, livestock, essentially anything acquired during the marriage. We're not getting divorced. Of course not, Patricia said smooth. But it's wise to understand the framework, especially when you're dealing with significant assets and potential tax liabilities. For instance, if you were to separate during an ongoing tax appeal, things can get complicated. I looked at Diane. She was studying her coffee mug. How complicated? Well, let's say, hypothetically, you and your wife separate while you have an outstanding tax assessment under appeal. The property value is being contested, which means its worth is in flux. In a divorce proceeding, the court would typically assess the property at its current county valuation, which in your case is quite high, and divide accordingly, meaning she'd be entitled to half of what the county says it's worth. In simplified terms, yes. Even if you later won the appeal and the value was adjusted downward, the divorce settlement would likely have been finalized based on the higher number. The barn cat came through the open door, wound around my legs. I could smell diesel fuel on my own hands. Outside, clouds were moving in from the west, the kind that meant snow. So if Diane filed for divorce right now, I said slow, she could claim half of $47,000 worth of property. Even though the assessment might be wrong, even though I'm fighting it. That's one potential scenario. Patricia glanced at Diane, which is why it's important to have these conversations now before any decisions are made, to understand what everyone's entitled to. Entitled to? I laughed, but it hurt coming out. My grandfather homesteaded this land in 1947. My father worked it for 50 years. I've been working it for 40. But because I married the wrong woman, she's entitled to half. Walt, Diane started, how long have you been planning this? I'm not planning anything. I'm being realistic. You sabotaged the first appeal. Now you're bringing lawyers to explain how you can take half the land in a divorce. I looked at Patricia. Did she mention her boyfriend is a developer who wants to buy the property? Did that come up in your consultation? Patricia's expression didn't change. My advice to Mrs. Brennan is focused on her legal rights and protections. What she chooses to do with those rights is her decision. Of course. I headed for the door. I've got work to do. Walt, wait. But I was already outside, walking back toward the barn. Behind me, I heard Diane saying something to Patricia, then the sound of papers being shuffled back into the briefcase. A few minutes later, both car doors slammed again. Both engines started. Both of them drove away, gravel popping under tires. I sat in the cold tractor seat, hands shaking, and tried to understand how everything had come apart so fast. I needed to get out of my own head. Decided to drive into town, maybe stop at the diner for lunch. Something normal, something that didn't involve lawyers or tax assessments or wives who brought attorneys to the house. Like, they were planning a hostile takeover. Main Street was quiet, middle of a Wednesday, most people at work. I parked near the diner, was reaching for the door handle when I saw them. Diane's Mercedes parked in front of the Millerton Hotel, and Diane herself coming out the front entrance with Travis Hammond. Middle of the day, broad daylight. He had his hand on her lower back, steering her toward his truck. She was laughing at something he'd said. They weren't trying to hide it, weren't even looking around to see who might notice. Just walked across the parking lot like they had every right. I sat in my truck, frozen. The steering wheel was cold under my hands. My breath fogged the windshield. A tap on my window made me jump. Pastor Jim stood there, collar visible under his winter coat. He didn't say anything, just looked at me with this expression I couldn't read. Sympathy, maybe? Or pity? Then he looked across the street at Diane and Hammond, who were getting into Hammond's truck now. Looked back at me. He leaned down, spoke through the closed window. I rolled it down. Son, he said quiet, nobody would blame you for whatever you decide to do. And then he walked away, headed toward the church 2 blocks down, left me sitting there with those words hanging in the cold air. Across the street, Hammond's truck pulled out of the parking lot. Diane was in the passenger seat checking her phone. They drove right past me. She didn't look over, didn't see me, or didn't care. Either way, the message was clear. I watched them disappear around the corner, sat there for another 5 minutes, maybe 10, until my hands stopped shaking enough to turn the key. Drove home with Pastor Jim's words echoing, nobody would blame you for whatever you decide to do. The question wasn't what other people would think anymore. The question was what I could live with. And sitting around, waiting for Diane to finish picking the ranch apart piece by piece, that wasn't something I could live with much longer. I thought about Claire Meadows, going through property records with her color-coded system. Thought about Vern's words, some things you can't fix by just holding on tighter. Maybe it was time to stop holding on. Maybe it was time to let Diane have what she thought she wanted and find out what happened when the spare tire finally rolled away on its own. Saturday morning, I started on the fence line that runs along the eastern property boundary. 3 miles of barbed wire and cedar posts, most of it original from when my grandfather put it up. Some of the wire was rusted, some of the posts were leaning. It needed work, and work was what I needed. The sky was gray, temperature just above freezing. Not quite cold enough for frost, not quite warm enough to feel like anything but late winter hanging on. I loaded the truck with tools, wire, replacement post, the old fence stretcher, grandfather's, the one with his initials stamped on the brass plate, went in last. I was 2 hours in, pulling staples from a rotted post, when Vern's truck rolled up the access road. He got out without a word, walked over and picked up the post hole digger. We worked like that for the next 4 hours. Him digging, me setting posts, both of us stretching wire. Didn't talk except for the necessary things. Hand me that hammer. Hold this steady. The kind of communication that happens when you've known someone 30 years and words just get in the way. The physical work felt good. Hands on tools, cold metal, the burn in my shoulders from digging, real problems with real solutions. Not like everything else, which was just chaos and confusion, and women leaving hotels with men who wanted to turn your family's land into condominiums. Around 2 o'clock, Vern stopped to drink from his thermos. Coffee steam rose in the cold air. "This helps," I said. "I know." That was it. That was the whole conversation. But it was enough. We finished the section by 4, just as the light was starting to go. My phone rang as I was loading tools back into the truck. Claire Meadows. "Walt, I've been going through the old records. The 1987 survey, the original property descriptions. There's something that doesn't add up." What kind of something?" "The meets and bounds description in the county database doesn't match the recorded plat from 1947. It's off by about 30 feet on the eastern boundary." That might not sound like much, but 30 feet across your property line means almost 2 acres of discrepancy. I looked at the fence line we just repaired, the eastern boundary. What does that mean for the assessment? It means they might be taxing you for land you don't actually own, or they're using the wrong acreage in their valuation. Papers rustling on her end. I need to verify it. My daddy used to do survey work before he got into farming. I still have his old compass and chain. I'm going to come out next week and walk the boundaries myself. Check it against the original survey markers. Your daddy's compass. It's old, but it's accurate. He always said numbers don't lie. People do. I want to make sure we're working with the right numbers. After we hung up, Vern looked at me over the truck bed. "She's thorough." "She is. Good quality in a person." I didn't answer, just secured the tailgate and drove him back to his place. Claire called again that evening around 9. I was sitting in the kitchen with the property tax paperwork spread across the table, trying to make sense of comparable sales data I didn't understand. "Are you still up?" she asked. "Yeah. I'm going through the appeal documentation. There's a lot here, and the deadline's coming up fast. I know it's late, but if you wanted to come by my place, we could work on it tonight. Get ahead of it." "You sure?" "I've got coffee and a kitchen table. That's all we need." Her house was a small ranch style on the edge of town, the kind built in the 60s when people cared more about function than style. The porch light was on. She opened the door before I could knock, wearing jeans and a sweater, reading glasses pushed up on her head. The house smelled like chamomile tea and lemon furniture polish, clean and organized. Family photos on the walls. Her with an older woman who must be her mother. Her as a kid, with a man I guessed was her father. Everything neat, everything in its place. We spread documents across her kitchen table. She'd already organized everything by category. Assessment records, survey maps, comparable sales, appeal requirements. Color-coded folders, tabs marking important sections. Her system was more thorough than anything I could have managed on my own. "The key," she said, pouring coffee, "is proving their comparable sales don't actually compare. They're using properties that sold for development, not working ranches. That inflates the value." As we worked through it piece by piece, she'd highlight something, explain it, show me where the county's logic didn't hold. The way she moved through the paperwork reminded me of watching a good mechanic diagnose an engine. Problem, systematic, methodical, nothing wasted. Around 11, she got quiet, sat back from the table, took off her reading glasses. "My father lost his land the same way. County error. Wrong survey data from the 60s that nobody caught until a reassessment in 95. By the time we figured it out, it was too late. He couldn't afford the new assessment. Had to sell." Oh, Vern mentioned that. "He died 6 months later. Heart attack, technically. But really, it was losing the farm." She looked at the papers spread between us. That land had been in his family since the 20s. He taught me to read surveys when I was 10 years old. Taught me about property records, about checking the details, about how a mistake in a database can cost someone everything they've worked for. Her voice got thick on that last part. She picked up her coffee mug, but her hands were shaking a little. Set it back down. "I'm sorry," she said. "This is probably more than you wanted to hear." "It's not." And she looked up at me then, really looked at me. Her eyes were red at the edges. "I won't let them take your land like they took his. I won't." The kitchen clock ticked. Outside, I could hear rain starting up, soft patter on the roof. One of those late winter rains that means the real thaw is coming soon. Thank you, I said, and meant it for more than just the tax work. We kept working until almost 2 in the morning. When I finally left, standing on her porch in the cold rain, she handed me a folder of documents we'd organized. We'll get through this, she said. The deadline's tight, but we have options. When driving home, I couldn't stop thinking about what she'd said. I won't let them take your land. Not we'll try or we'll see. Just a flat promise, delivered like an oath. Diane's car wasn't in the driveway when I got home. Out again. I didn't bother checking my phone to see if she'd texted. Just went inside, set Claire's folder on the kitchen table, where Diane's lawyer friend had sat a few days before. Some people see land as something to own. Some see it as something to sell. And some, like Claire, like her father, see it as something worth fighting for. Something that matters beyond money or development potential or property value. Something that means everything. I needed more feed on Thursday, which meant another trip to Randy's. The bell chimed when I walked in. 3 women were standing near the counter, Diane's book club friends. I recognized them from various town functions over the years. The kind of women who always seem to be organizing something, judging something, discussing someone else's business over wine. They turned when I entered. The tallest one, Karen something, stepped forward. She was wearing expensive workout clothes, the kind that cost more than my monthly feed bill. Walt, we need to talk to you. Randy was behind the counter, suddenly very interested in his inventory clipboard. Don't think we have much to talk about, I said, heading for the feed aisle. She followed me. The other 2 flanked her like backup singers. Diane is our friend. We're concerned about how you're treating her. I stopped, turned around. How I'm treating her. And she's told us everything about how you're trying to trap her financially, using the property to control her, making her feel guilty for wanting to explore her own life. The words came out practiced, like they'd rehearsed this. Behind them, I could see Randy watching, his face carefully neutral. That's an interesting version of events. It's what's happening, another one said. You're using the ranch as leverage, threatening her security because she wants some independence. I felt my jaw tighten. The feed bag sat heavy in my cart. Outside the window, I could see Main Street, see the same pickup trucks, parked in the same spots they'd been parked for 20 years. This town, these people, I'd known them my whole life. And now 3 women I barely knew were standing in Randy's store telling me I was the villain. She asked for an open relationship at a Christmas party, I said quiet. Then she started dating a developer who wants to buy my family's land. Meanwhile, she sabotaged the tax appeal and brought a lawyer to discuss how to divide the property in a divorce. But somehow I'm the one trying to control things. Karen crossed her arms. That's a very one-sided interpretation. Ma'am, Randy's voice cut through from behind the counter. That's his family's land. Been Brennan land since 1907. I don't know what story you heard, but maybe there's more to it than you think. The 3 women looked at Randy like he'd betrayed some unspoken alliance. Karen's expression went cold. Of course you'd take his side. You men always do. Randy set down his clipboard, came around the counter. He was a small man, 60 pounds lighter than me, but there was steel in his spine. I'm not taking sides. I'm stating facts. That land's been in his family 3 generations. The county reassessment's suspicious. And Diane's been seen leaving the Millerton Hotel with Travis Hammond more than once. He looked at me. That feed you got there, it's on the house today. Randy, you don't have to. I do, actually. He met the women's eyes steady. We take care of our own in this town. That's how it works. The 3 of them left without buying anything. The bell chimed angry behind them. Randy rang up the feed as $0, handed me the receipt. Appreciate that, I said. They don't know the whole story. Most people don't. He leaned on the counter. But word's getting around about Hammond, about the lawyer, about all of it. People are starting to figure out which way the wind's blowing. My phone rang that night while I was cleaning up from dinner. Claire. Her voice was shaking. Walt. I found it. I found the error. The survey issue? Yes. The 1987 survey was definitely wrong. They measured from the wrong benchmark. You've been assessed for almost 3 acres you don't actually own, but that's not the big thing. The paper's rattling on her end. I ran a search on who requested the reassessment. Standard procedure is these things happen automatically. But someone can also request a property be reassessed if they have justification. Okay, the reassessment on your property was requested by an adjacent property owner, a company called High Ridge Development, LLC. Her breathing was fast now. Walt, I looked up the registration. High Ridge Development is owned by Travis Hammond. He requested the reassessment 6 months ago, last June. I sat down at the kitchen table. June. Before Diane ever mentioned the open relationship, before any of this started, she paused. He requested it, and he submitted comparable sales data that was deliberately inflated, properties that sold for commercial development, not agriculture. He basically engineered the whole tax crisis. The kitchen felt too small suddenly, too quiet. Outside, I could hear rain starting up again, harder this time. The kind of rain that turns everything to mud. Why would he do that? Because if you can't pay the taxes, the county forces a sale. And adjacent property owners get first right of refusal. He could buy your land at auction for a fraction of what it's worth. Her voice was tight with anger. He's been planning this for months, Walt. The relationship with Diane, I think that was part of it. Get close to her, convince her to push for a sale, maybe even file for divorce to force your hand. She's not the mastermind. She's the tool he's using. I looked at the window, at my own reflection in the dark glass. Behind me, the empty kitchen. Diane's car still gone. Can you prove all this? I have the documentation. The reassessment request with his company's name on it, the comparable sales he submitted, the timeline, all of it. She was typing something, keyboard clicking. This changes everything for your appeal. We can show the reassessment was malicious, based on fraudulent data submitted by someone with a financial interest in forcing a sale. What about Diane? Claire was quiet for a second. I don't know what she knew or when she knew it, but either way, she's been used. Hammond's been playing both of you. After we hung up, I sat in the dark kitchen for a long time. The rain got harder. Somewhere in the house, a pipe creaked. The refrigerator hummed its steady rhythm. Diane came home round midnight. I heard her car, heard her come in, heard her pause in the kitchen doorway. We need to talk, I said. I'm tired, Walt. Your boyfriend requested the tax reassessment 6 months ago, before you mentioned the open relationship. He engineered the whole thing to force a sale so he could buy the land cheap. She didn't say anything for a long moment, just stood there in the doorway, keys still in her hand. That's not true. Claire found the documentation. His company requested it. Submitted fake comparable sales. All of it's on record. Claire, her voice went sharp. My cousin Claire, the one you've been spending so much time with lately. She's helping with the tax appeal. I'm sure she is. She walked away. A minute later, I heard the bedroom door close. Not slam, just close, quiet, and final. Like she'd already made her decision about everything, and facts weren't going to change it. I sat there thinking about Hammond, about how long he'd been planning this, about how Diane was just a piece in his scheme, same as the tax assessment, same as everything else, a tool. Not even a partner, just leverage. The question was whether she'd realize it before it was too late. Sunday morning, I drove to Vern's workshop instead of going to the VFW. He was there like always, door open despite the cold, welding something on an old John Deere. The torch hissed and sparked, throwing blue light across the concrete floor. Smell of hot metal and welding flux. He finished his bead, shut off the torch, flipped up his mask. Figured you'd show up eventually, he said. That obvious? Man doesn't skip Sunday coffee unless he's got something weighing on him. He set the torch aside, pulled 2 folding chairs out from behind a workbench. Sit. We sat. Outside, the sky was trying to decide between rain and sleet. March weather, caught between seasons, couldn't make up its mind which way to go. I've been spending time with Claire, I said. I know. A lot of time. Vern pulled out a thermos, poured coffee into 2 metal cups, handed me one. She helping with the tax appeal? Yeah, but it's more than that now. I wrap my hands around the cup. I think about her when she's not around. Look forward to seeing her. Notice things like how she organizes her files, how she drinks her tea, how she gets this little line between her eyebrows when she's concentrating. Sounds like you got feelings. She's Diane's cousin. She's also a grown woman who makes her own choices. He sipped his coffee, eyes on me over the rim. What's really bothering you? That she's related to Diane, or that you think wanting her makes you as bad as Diane wanting Hammond? There it was. The question I'd been avoiding for weeks. Is it revenge? I asked. Am I doing this to hurt Diane the way she hurt me? Vern set his cup on the concrete floor, leaned back in his chair. Let me tell you something about revenge. Revenge is cold. It's calculated. It's doing something you don't actually want just to make someone else hurt. He looked at me steady. Is that what this is? You spending time with Claire because you don't want to, just to prove a point? No. Then it's not revenge. It's recognition. He picked up his cup again. Took you 20 years to figure out Diane wasn't who you thought she was. Took you 3 weeks to figure out Claire is. That's not revenge. That's just having your eyes open finally. A gust of wind blew through the open bay door, carrying cold rain. The welded metal on the workbench ticked as it cooled. Still feels wrong somehow. 'Cause you got a conscience. That's good. Means you're not like her. Vern stood, walked to the bay door, looked out at the gray morning. But here's what I learned after my Mary died. Guilt's useful when it stops you from doing something bad. It's useless when it stops you from doing something good. You feel guilty about Claire? Sometimes. That's normal. You've been married 20 years. But ask yourself, is the guilt about Claire or about letting go of what you thought you had with Diane? He turned around. Son, there's a difference between taking what's not yours and accepting what's been offered. Claire's offering. Question is whether you're brave enough to accept. The rain picked up, drumming on the metal roof. I finished my coffee, stood. Thanks, Vern. One more thing. He put a hand on my shoulder. I've known Claire since she was 16 years old. Lost her daddy, took care of her mother. Worked at that county office for 22 years, without complaint. She's good people, Walt. Better than good. If you're going to do this, you do it right. You treat her like she matters, not like she's some consolation prize. I know. Do you? Because from where I'm standing, she's the prize Diane was too stupid to see. Her own family. Don't you make the same mistake. Claire came out to the ranch Thursday afternoon to do the boundary survey. She brought her father's old compass and a measuring chain, tools that looked like they belonged in a museum but worked perfectly. We walked the eastern fence line together, her checking bearings against the original 1947 survey markers, me holding the chain steady while she sighted through the compass. The sky was clearing, first real warmth of spring trying to break through. Birds were starting to come back. I could hear them in the trees along the creek. The mud season was starting, that in-between time when winter lets go and spring hasn't quite arrived. 32 feet off, she said, checking her notes. Your grandfather's survey was correct. The county's using data from a 1987 rezone that measured from the wrong benchmark. She looked up at me, satisfaction in her eyes. This is it, Walt. This proves the assessment is wrong. We can win the appeal. I should have been thinking about the tax money, about the ranch, about beating Hammond's scheme. But instead, I was noticing how the afternoon light caught in Claire's hair, how her voice got excited when she talked about survey markers, how she held her father's compass like it was something sacred. What? She said, catching me staring. Nothing. Just thank you for all this. It's my job. It's more than your job. She looked away, tucked the compass back in its case. We should celebrate. The appeal hearing's in 2 weeks, and with this evidence, you'll win. I've got something coming up in April, I said. Spring branding. Been doing it for 40 years. My father did it for 50 before me. It's tradition. Whole community comes out. VFW guys, neighbors, kids from the 4-H club. We brand the new calves, have coffee, just be together. I paused. I'd like you to be there. She went still. Walt, that's... People will see. People will talk. I know. Diane will know. I know that too. She met my eyes then. Are you sure? I'm sure. She held her father's compass, testing its weight in her hand. The brass caught the sunlight. Some things hold better than you think, she said quiet, when they're meant to. And she was talking about the compass, about survey equipment, about precision and craft, but we both knew she wasn't. April 12th, I said. 6 in the morning. Bring warm clothes and coffee. I'll be there. Walking back to the house, I looked at the fence we'd surveyed, the land my grandfather had homesteaded, the fields that would turn green in another few weeks. Everything was changing, the season, the weather, my life. But some things stayed solid, the land, the work. And now, maybe, Claire. April 12th came in warm and clear, first real spring morning of the year. I was up at 5, coffee made, checking equipment before people started arriving. The branding irons were heating in the propane forge, sending waves of shimmer into the dawn air. Smell of heating metal mixed with fresh grass and morning dew. The calves were penned and waiting, bawling for their mothers who answered from the adjacent pasture. Vern showed up first, truck rolling in at 5:30. He got out carrying his own thermos and a box of donuts from the bakery in town. Good day for it, he said, looking at the sky. It is. We didn't mention Claire, didn't need to. He'd seen my truck at her house twice this week, knew what that meant, approved without saying a word. By 6, a dozen trucks were parked in the yard. Randy from the feed store, Pastor Jim, 3 guys from the VFW. A couple of 4-H kids whose parents ran the dairy operation, east of town. And Jake, who'd driven up from Cincinnati the night before, was standing by the corral with a rope in his hands. Dad, he said when I walked over, it's good to see this happening again. Feels like old times. Good to have you here. He glanced at the driveway. Mom coming? I'd called Diane 2 days ago, told her about the branding. She said she'd think about it, hadn't heard from her since. Don't know, Jake nodded, didn't push it. Smart kid, knew when to let things be. At 6:15, Claire's Corolla came up the drive. She got out wearing jeans, work boots, a canvas jacket that looked like it had seen better days. Hair pulled back practical, no makeup, no pretense, just ready to work. The conversation in the yard didn't stop exactly, but it shifted. People noticed. Randy nudged the guy next to him. Vern smiled into his coffee. Pastor Jim watched, with that careful expression he got when he was withholding judgment, but leaning toward approval. Claire walked over to me, didn't hesitate, didn't act like she was doing anything unusual. "Morning, Walt." "Morning. Coffee's in the thermos by the fence." I brought my own. She held up a travel mug. "Where do you want me?" "Branding team. You'll work the iron while I hold the calves." That made people look. Branding ironwork wasn't symbolic. It was real work. Hot metal on hide, required steady hands and confidence. I was putting her in the middle of everything, making it clear she belonged here. We worked through the morning. Each calf came through the chute. I'd pin it, hold it steady. Jake would mark it with the chalk to show which brand, and Claire would press the hot iron firm for exactly 4 seconds. The smell of burned hair and leather rose in the warm air. Calves bawling, mothers answering, men calling out numbers, the hiss and sizzle of the iron. Claire was good at it. Didn't flinch, didn't hesitate. Just worked methodical and clean, same way she worked through property records. After each calf, she'd dip the iron back in the forge, wait for it to heat, and be ready for the next one. Around 9, Pastor Jim came over to watch. He'd already blessed the first calf of the day, an old tradition he'd kept up for 30 years. Now he stood there observing Claire work, arms crossed, expression thoughtful. "She's got good form," he said to me quiet. "Steady hands." My father used to say, "You can tell a person's character by how they handle hot iron." What's it tell you? That she's not afraid of the work, and she's not here for show. He glanced at me. "Some women can't handle ranch life, Walt. Get bored, get restless, want something more exciting. Some women, the right women, understand it's not about excitement, it's about meaning." And he walked away before I could respond. But the message was clear. Pastor Jim had judged, and Claire had passed. By 11, we'd finished. 23 calves branded, all of them healthy, all of them back with their mothers in the pasture. The men stood around drinking coffee from thermoses, eating the donuts Vern had brought, talking about weather and cattle prices and whose truck needed work. I found my grandfather's fence stretcher in the machine shed where I'd left it that morning. Walked over to where Claire was washing her hands at the outdoor spigot, water running over her fingers. They were red from the heat of the iron. Would probably ache tonight. "Got something for you," I said. She dried her hands on her jeans, turned around. I held out the fence stretcher. "This was my grandfather's. He made it himself in 1947, same year he homesteaded this place. See the plate? Hold things together." I put it in her hands. "I want you to have it." She looked at the tool, then at me, understanding what I was saying without me having to spell it out. This wasn't just a tool, it was legacy. It was saying she belonged here, in this work, on this land, in this life. "Walt, I can't." "You can. You held this land together when Diane was trying to tear it apart. You deserve this more than anyone." Her eyes got bright. She held the fence stretcher like it was something precious, fingers tracing the engraved motto. "Some things hold better than you think," she said soft, "when they're meant to." Behind us, I heard gravel crunching. Turned to see Diane's Mercedes pulling into the yard. She got out, wearing clothes more appropriate for a garden party than a ranch. Saw me standing with Claire, saw the fence stretcher in Claire's hands, and her face went hard. She walked over fast, heels sinking in the soft ground. "Really? Walt, you're giving her grandfather's tools now? Making her part of the family tradition?" "She earned it. She's been helping you behind my back. She's been saving the ranch you tried to help steal." I kept my voice level, aware that people were watching. "The appeal hearing was yesterday. We won." Diane blinked. "What?" Claire set the fence stretcher down carefully, pulled a folder from her jacket. "The appeal was successful. The reassessment was overturned based on fraudulent comparable sales data and incorrect property boundaries. Your tax bill is back to its original amount, $12,000 instead of $47,000. How did you? I found the survey error, and I found the documentation showing Travis Hammond's company requested the reassessment 6 months ago. Before Walt knew anything about it, before you mentioned the open relationship." Claire's voice stayed professional, but there was steel underneath. "He engineered the whole thing, Diane. The tax crisis, the pressure to sell, probably even the relationship with you. He was using you to force a sale so he could buy the land cheap." Diane's face went white. "That's not true. Travis wouldn't." "It's all documented. County records, LLC registration, everything. I submitted it as evidence of malicious intent. The county's actually investigating him now for fraud." You had no right." "I had every right. It's my job." Claire picked up the fence stretcher again, held it like a talisman. "And unlike you, I actually care about protecting this land. My father lost his farm to county error. I wasn't going to let Walt lose his to a developer's scheme. Jake walked over, stood next to me. Silent support. Diane looked at him, at me, at Claire, at the men standing around the yard watching this unfold. You slept with her, Diane said. Accusation and realization mixing together. My cousin. You actually… Yes. The word hung there. No justification, no explanation, just truth. You're no better than you? I said quiet. No, Diane, I'm different than you. I waited until you made it clear you were gone. Waited until you brought a lawyer to discuss dividing the property. Waited until I found out your boyfriend was using you to steal my family's land. And then I found someone who actually values what I've been trying to protect. Pastor Jim was closer now. I could feel him nearby. Randy, too. Vern had his arms crossed, watching. The whole community bearing witness. The ranch is legally protected, Claire said, pulling out more papers. I also found documentation showing it was left to Walt as sole inheritance through his grandfather's will, not as marital property. Diane, even in a divorce, you get nothing. The land was never yours. Diane looked like she'd been slapped. I've been married to him for 20 years. To a man? Yes. Not to his inheritance. Montana law is clear on that. Claire handed the papers to Diane. Your lawyer should have checked before she came out here. Diane stared at the documents, at the county seals, at the legal language that said she'd already lost. Jake put his hand on my shoulder, not saying anything, just there. I need to go, Diane said finally. Her voice was small, defeated. She looked around the yard one more time, at the community that had judged her and found her wanting, at the cousin she'd dismissed who'd turned out to matter more than she did, at the husband she'd taken for granted who'd found someone better. She walked back to her Mercedes, got in, drove away. Gravel crunching under tires, dust rising in the spring sun. Nobody said anything until the sound faded completely. Then Randy raised his coffee cup. To Walt, and to getting the bastards who try to steal our land. A murmur of agreement. Cups raised. Pastor Jim nodded slowly, approval in his eyes. Jake squeezed my shoulder harder. Claire stood next to me, grandfather's fence stretcher in her hands, and smiled. Not triumphant, just peaceful, like something had finally been made right. Thank you, I said to her. Thank you for letting me help. She looked out at the calves in the pasture, the newly branded stock that would carry my family's mark into the future. This is what matters. Not the money, not the drama, just this. She was right. The land, the work, the community, the tradition, everything that actually mattered was still here. Everything that didn't, Diane Hammond the schemes and lies, that was already dust in the wind. Diane moved out the following week, didn't make a scene, didn't fight, just came by one afternoon when I was out checking cattle, packed her things, and left. She took her clothes, some furniture she'd bought, the expensive coffee maker, left the wedding photos on the dresser, face down. Jake helped me box them up later. We didn't talk much, just worked through the bedroom methodically. He found the hotel receipts in her nightstand drawer, 8 of them, different dates, all from the last 4 months. Looked at them, looked at me. You okay, Dad? Yeah, I am, actually. And I meant it. No anger left, no bitterness, just relief that it was over. That I could finally see clearly what I'd been refusing to see for months, maybe years. Diane had never wanted this life. She'd wanted the idea of it, the romance of a ranch, the security of land, but not the reality. Not the work, not the isolation, not the slow and steady rhythm of seasons and cattle and fence repair. She'd wanted excitement. Hammond had offered it. And when his scheme fell apart, he'd dropped her like bad wire. Word got around town fast about Hammond. The county investigation turned up more than just my case. He'd been requesting reassessments on multiple properties, always targeting people who couldn't afford the inflated taxes, always positioning himself to buy cheap at auction. The prosecutor got involved. Last I heard, he was facing fraud charges and his development company was dissolving. Randy mentioned it at the feed store 2 weeks later. Hammond skipped town. Left a lot of debts, a lot of angry investors. Some people saying he might have done this before, in other counties. What about Diane? I asked. Couldn't help myself. Heard she moved to Billings, got an apartment, looking for work. Randy rang up my purchase, gave me that look older men give when they're choosing their words careful. Between you and me, I think she's embarrassed, realizing she got played as much as anyone. And I paid for the feed, loaded it into my truck, drove home thinking about how fast things can fall apart when they're not built on solid ground. Hammond's scheme, Diane's plans, the whole house of cards, gone in a matter of weeks. But the land was still here. The cattle were healthy. Spring was coming in strong now, grass greening up, calves growing, birds building nests in the barn eaves. Claire started coming by on weekends. She'd bring her mother sometimes, the older woman frail but sharp-eyed, approving of the way Claire and I moved around each other easy and comfortable, We'd have coffee on the porch, watch the sun come up over the ridge, talk about small things, weather, the calves, plans for the garden. Her mother mentioned once that Claire seemed happier than she'd been in years. Lighter, she said, like she's been carrying something heavy and finally set it down. I knew the feeling. Jake came up from Cincinnati twice that month, the second time bringing his kids, my grandchildren, 7 and 9 years old, city kids mostly, but curious about the ranch. I showed them how to check fence, how to read the cattle's body language, how to use grandfather's old tools. The boy asked if he could learn to use the surveying compass someday, and Claire showed him how to sight a bearing, how to read the brass markings, how precision matters. Your great-great-grandfather used this, she told him, and your great-grandfather. And now your grandfather, someday if you want, it could be yours. The boy held it careful, understanding instinctively that some things matter beyond their function. That tools carry history, carry meaning, carry the weight of everyone who used them before. One Sunday morning in late April, I sat on the porch with coffee and the ranch journal my father had kept, and his father before him. Record of weather, cattle births, repairs made, notes about what worked and what didn't. I added my entry, date, temperature, notes about the new calves, mention of the fence line Claire and I had surveyed and found true. Claire came out of the house, her house now as much as mine, carrying her own mug. She'd stayed over the night before, and the night before that. Wasn't hiding it, wasn't making a show of it, just living. She sat in the other chair, looked out at the fields. Your grandfather would be proud. You kept the land. We kept the land. She reached over, took my hand. Her fingers were warm from the coffee mug. I could see the fence stretcher hanging in the machine shed, right where grandfather had kept it, right where it belonged. Some things hold together when they're meant to. Some things last because they're built on bedrock instead of sin. The daffodils I'd planted on my first wife Linda's grave last fall were blooming now, yellow and bright. I'd take Claire there later, introduce her properly. Tell Linda I'd finally figured out what I should have known all along, that holding on isn't the same as holding together, that the right person doesn't need convincing or chasing or fixing, she just fits. The sun cleared the tree line. The fields stretched green toward the horizon. Spring was here, and with it, everything beginning again. Not new exactly, but renewed, remade, right. 3 weeks later, I sat on the porch at dawn with my coffee. The rain gauge showed 2 inches from last night's storm. Good for the new grass. Claire was inside making breakfast, her mother coming by later to help with the garden. Normal things. Simple things, the kind of things that matter when you stop chasing what you thought you wanted and start appreciating what you have. My grandfather's motto said, "Hold things together." It took me 62 years to understand what he meant. It's not about holding on to everything that comes your way. It's about knowing what's worth holding and letting the rest break. Diane wanted freedom, wanted excitement, wanted something she couldn't name. I can't fault her for that, not anymore. But I can fault her for trying to take what wasn't hers on the way out. The land remembers who loved it and who tried to sell it. She made her choice. So did I. Claire came out with her own mug, sat in the chair next to mine. She'd brought her mother's quilt, the one handed down 3 generations, said the porch got chilly in the mornings. We sat quiet, watching the sun come up over the ridge, turning the fields gold. "The northeast 40's looking good," she said. "Grass is coming in thick." It is, and that's what our conversations were like now. Simple observations about the land, about the work, about what needed doing. No drama, no schemes, no hidden agendas. Just 2 people who understood that some things matter more than excitement. Things like morning coffee and honest work and knowing the person next to you will still be there when the sun comes up. The county had apologized, in writing, for the assessment error. Hammond was gone. Diane was gone. And I was still here, on land my grandfather cleared with his own hands, with a woman who understood why that mattered. Some battles you win with noise. This one I won, with receipts, precision, and a woman who knew how to read old survey maps. But the real victory wasn't in the winning, it was in the staying. In the morning, coffee in the rain gauge, and the fence lines that held true, the land remembers. And now, so would I.